Welcome back to GoSycamores.com. A couple days earlier, normally we talk to you on game day, but I'm Luke Martin alongside Brian Fritz, previewing the matchup with South Dakota State on Saturday night in Brookings, South Dakota. And Fritzy, you've been a part of matchups where Indiana State was a severe underdog and see the Sycamores come out on top. Of course, I think of that North Dakota State game a couple years back in the Fargo Dome, which was a remarkable one when Indiana State upset number 1 North Dakota State. But this is going to be, no doubt, a tough challenge for this Indiana State football team, trying to build off of a game last week I know that they weren't necessarily pleased with.
Well, and I guess since it's South Dakota State week, I'll reference back to a game Shakir Bell had running for better than 200 yards against South Dakota State while Trent Miles was the head coach, and the Sycamores winning the conference opener there on the road as big underdogs, which, obviously South Dakota State's coming off North Dakota State, and there's got to be a little natural letdown, you would think, given the rivalry between those two schools. They'll certainly be ready for the Sycamores, but for Indiana State, I think you hit it on the head. The coaches, I think, really felt like the Sycamores left some things out there last week and didn't, in just looking at themselves, didn't play the football game that they hoped they would play.
We had Coordinator's Corner on Wednesday, and I think Coach Chiklinski put it best. What's really going to be a big determination of whether this game on Saturday can go in Indiana State's favor is going to be how they do on third and manageable, third and short, which evident against you and I last week, just the Sycamores were not as good as they showed early on this season.
And a lot of that has to do with the competition. And that's, again, for the second straight week, you're going to see in South Dakota State a team like Northern Iowa that you would really expect to finish in the top half of the league. And there's no question that teams that are in the top half of the Valley cut above what we saw in the pre-conference season.
And now teams we've seen this year and probably will see, this South Dakota State team is really darn good. I mean, a week ago, they could be the number 1 team in the country right now because a play here, a play there. That game was there for them in the taking, leading entering the fourth quarter in Fargo.
And they've, like North Dakota State, gotten to a point where they just reload. They don't necessarily rebuild because they've graduated, players to the NFL here really recently, and it hasn't made any difference in terms of what their team has looked like. It's going to be a really physical football game, and they're very dangerous on both sides of the ball. It's just going to take a really great effort from Indiana State. And along with that, I did think they got that against Northern Iowa, but what they didn't get was great execution. You've got to do both against a team this good.
And it seems like one of the main reasons why South Dakota State is so good is Taryn Christian, their quarterback, who actually made his first career start against Indiana State at Coughlin Alumni Stadium back in 2015. The kid, you can go through, and I say the kid, but the man has all the accolades you can think of, 7 school records at South Dakota State, the all-time touchdown pass leader in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. He's kind of the straw that stirs the drink in South Dakota.
Yeah, and for all the visitors, R.I.P. to Kauffman Stadium, by the way. But you're right. Christian definitely is their catalyst on offense. There's no question about it. He's a dual threat. He's a heck of a player. He's experienced. He's all the things you'd like to have your quarterback be at this stage in his career. And certainly he's going to keep the defensive coordinator, Coach Wilson, really up late at night, I'm sure, this week, trying to figure out how to get his guys in the right position to be able to contain and slow down Christian.
In the open, I brought up that win on the road against North Dakota State. You brought up the Beef Bowl game when Shakir Bell ran for a ton of yards. I think over 200-plus yards, maybe that game against South Dakota State out the top of my head. In order to win a game like this when you're an underdog, you've seen more of them than I have because you've called both of those games. How important is it to almost get so many key defensive turnovers to where it really seems like that's the side of the football in these games that really can flip that switch?
Well, when they won at North Dakota State, when they were number 1, there were 2 pick sixes by Johnny Tawala. Turnovers in football just can be such a momentum and game changer that if you're able to create a few of those, it can definitely flip a game and turn the tide in favor of that team that might not be expected to win all of the time. I always go back to the movie Miracle and Herb Brooks' speech at the end before the Americans play the Russians. They might, if you play 10 times, they might win 9, but not this game. And, football is kind of that way because it's always just one game that year. You don't usually, unless you get in the playoffs, get multiple shots at somebody. So, it's all about one game and one day. And hopefully on Saturday, the Sycamores are able to put it all together.
We'll see what happens. Number 3, South Dakota State and Indiana State. Saturday night, 7 o'clock Eastern will be kickoff. Our coverage begins on WIBQ 97.9 at 6 o'clock for the Pepsi Countdown to Kickoff. For my partner, Brian Fritz, I am Luke Martin. We will talk to you on Saturday night from Brookings, South Dakota.